Greetings, everyone. Let me ask you, just how important are appearances? It's been said, don't judge a book by its cover. But in real life, are we swayed by appearances? Welcome to my podcast, A Psychologist Looks at Scripture. My name is Peter Doherty. I'm a Catholic priest and a psychologist who integrates my training in psychology and Scripture studies to help understand the Gospels from a different perspective and focus on new pastoral teachings for Christians. The Gospels are a rich source of learning about God and developing our spirituality. They are far from exhausting the learning potential. My podcasts are between 7 to 10 minutes in length, where I share insights and reflections that I hope will be useful to you. Please don't hesitate to contact me with questions or concerns. I always love to hear from my listeners. Today's podcast is from Mark chapter 12, verse 38 to 44. This gospel will be read in churches on November the 10th, 2024. Today's gospel reminds me of the September 15th podcast when I examined the Gospel of Mark chapter 9, verse 30 to 37, where Jesus leaves instructions about Christian leadership. He criticizes the scribes concerning how they exercise their leadership. Jesus is critical of their lack of concern for those less fortunate and what lengths they went to in order to look so important. I would like to unpack this more on this theme. It's healthy to have positive self-esteem and self-worth. I would even go as far as to say that pride in one's achievements can be healthy. Like anything else, too much of a good thing is not good. The scribes that Jesus is describing went too far. They were self-focused. They had made it all about themselves. You probably know people who are so self-focused that it's not about self-esteem anymore. There is little room in their heart for anyone else, and therein lies the problem. The lesson in today's gospel is clear. Do not get seduced by appearances. There is also a sub-theme of humility. Jesus is critical of the scribes for their hypocritical behavior. As Luke chapter 12, verse 48 states, "To whom much is given, much will be required." Jesus emphasized the idea of responsibility that comes with blessings and resources. The verse suggests that those who have been entrusted with more, whether it be talents, wealth, or knowledge, are held to a higher standard of accountability. The scribes and the Pharisees had a major advantage over the people because they had the opportunity to study the Scriptures. Their status came with many privileges and opportunities that were denied to so many people. However, rather than helping the people, they laid down heavy burdens. We see this in Matthew chapter 23, verse 4, when Jesus says, "For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move with them with one of their fingers." Rather than be inspired by the Scriptures, the scribes, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees were using the Scriptures for their own edification. Jesus continues his teachings while looking beyond appearances when he is watching wealthy people put in large sums of money in the temple treasury. On the level of appearances, the large donations would suggest that the rich deserve more, while in reality, it is the poor widow who gave all she had, who actually gave the most and is the most deserving. Jesus directs his followers to pay attention to what is going on in the hearts of individuals, and do not jump to conclusions based solely on behavior and or appearances. Jesus would call the scribes out for their bad behavior. It is important to realize that not all the scribes and Pharisees were crooked. Jesus acknowledges the potential for scribes to be good when he states that a scribe who becomes a disciple of the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house, bringing forth treasures both new and old. We see this in Matthew chapter 13, verse 52. Do not forget also that Nicodemus was a Pharisee and a close follower of Jesus. Jesus realized that not everyone will have the same resources and opportunities in their lives, and is trying to make this point to his disciples. Because of their poverty, some may not be able to participate fully, and they should not be penalized for their lack of resources. They are to be valued for who they are, not by what they know or what they own. The phrase, "it rains on the just and the unjust," originates from Matthew chapter 5, verse 45. In this verse, Jesus states, "He makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust." The statement is part of the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus emphasizes God's impartiality in bestowing blessings, such as sunshine and rain, upon all the people, regardless of their moral standing. Also, keep in mind that in Palestine, where Jesus lived, it was a desert. Rain was likely a good thing. My point here is that a person's abilities or disabilities are not determined by personal goodness. Therefore, one should not be judged by the opportunities given to them. A friend of mine once told me that she always assumes the best intentions of people. Some people may say she's being gullible or naive. Perhaps her generosity will be abused, but that is on the abuser. Upon further reflection, I consider my friend to be very wise and compassionate. She's always looking for an opportunity to see people at their best. She reminds us that we are not always have the full story. We do not know what personal struggles a given person may be experiencing and what may be impacting their ability to live fully. This gospel reading can be reassuring to anyone desiring to deepen their relationship with God. We ought not to be discouraged when we do not see the progress we would like or expected. Like the widow in our reading, our efforts are not insignificant, as God is aware of our efforts and our desire to do better. Sometimes we'll be like the poor widow, putting in 2 small coins. It's not much, but we are doing the best we can, and that is what is pleasing to God. Thank you for listening. I invite you to join me next week when I examine the Gospel of Mark, who describes Jesus' teaching about paying attention to the signs around us, indicating God's will. If this is the first time you've heard my podcast and you're interested in hearing more, I urge you to listen to my podcast listed on the website. Every Sunday, I release a new podcast focusing on the gospel for the following week. I invite you to listen to all the podcasts, and I hope the reflections are useful to you. The podcast, A Psychologist Looks at Scripture, is found in most platforms that carry podcasts. The podcast is also available on YouTube. Please do not hesitate to leave a review or a like. Feedback from my listeners can be helpful in the development of the podcast. I'd also like to thank my team, Heather Patel-Doherty and Richard Coulomb, who play an important part in the preparation of this podcast. If you have any questions or concerns, I can be reached by email at peter.doherty, that's DOHERTYOMI, @gmail.com. God bless you and have a great week.